thought leadership is a long play. If you think that you're going to start into a marketing program and employ thought leadership marketing and it's just going to like crush it in 2-3 months, like that's not going to happen. It's going to be a long play.
What does it really mean to be a thought leader in B2B? That's what we're here to find out. This is the Notorious Thought Leader, a podcast for B2B marketers who want to generate demand by creating content that builds credibility and thought leadership. In each episode, Erin Balsa helps demystify thought leadership and uncovers how companies are using thought leadership to generate demand. Let's get started.
My guest today is Pete Larkin, VP of Marketing and Sales at Parlay. Thanks for being here today, Pete.
Thanks, Erin. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So to kick things off, I'm going to ask the question I ask every guest at the start of the show. In your own words, what the fuck is thought leadership?
Yeah, for me, the very short version of this is someone having authority, audience, and expertise that individuals, organizations, and industries look to for guidance, leadership, and inspiration.
So the word expertise comes up a lot. Before the show, I asked people to fill out a 10-question yes or no form, and it's pretty split. Some people say, yes, you do have to have an expertise or be a subject matter expert to be viewed as a thought leader. And others say no. And that was something that really surprised me. I was kind of expecting the majority of people to say yes, but it's been pretty split so far. And a lot of that comes down to perception. Like, who is it that's perceiving you as a thought leader, right? So do you think perception plays into like the level of expertise a person should have?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that perception has a huge impact on who is and who is not seen as a thought leader. But to me, there's a big difference between those who are perceived as thought leaders, those who really are thought leaders, and what I may consider to be as a visionary thought leader, and kind of the differences between a thought leader, visionary thought leader, because the experts in a space, the people who really know what they're talking about, they can see through perceived thought leaders and actual thought leaders pretty easily.
For sure. And I'm glad you touched on visionary because I got a chance to read and review your new thought leadership framework. And I thought it was pretty cool. I love seeing thought leadership frameworks and seeing how different people kind of wrap their heads around this. And so you have separated two personas. You have the thought leader and, like you just said, the visionary. So could you just explain a bit the key differences between the thought leader and the visionary?
Yeah, so in this framework that I've built, I've actually broke it down into, there are 4 different kind of quadrants. I started off with a Venn diagram of when I was building up this framework, but realized really quickly that there were way too many circles. And anytime you have too many circles in a Venn diagram, it just gets crazy. And so I ended up switching it into a quadrant where I have visionaries, dreamers, influencers, thought leaders, and what I call visionary thought leaders. So starting off with your question, to talk about a visionary, these are people, and the placement in this quadrant is the top left corner. And the visualization is kind of important when you're thinking about how this framework works. But a visionary in this top left quadrant, they are tenured experts. They're exploring new territory, challenging commonly held beliefs, introducing original ideas. The thing is that oftentimes visionaries may not have a large audience or a large following. They may be growing. That following could be growing, sometimes slower than people would really like, but they have high authority with smaller groups and in their current audiences. I can think of multiple people in this situation, people that I've worked with who are like the industry's top talent, original thinkers, so incredibly good at what they do, but they just don't have a big following and they don't have the audience. And so when you think about thought leadership, you need to have followers in order to be a leader. And many visionaries, many really experienced, talented, original thinkers just don't have the audience or following that I would say is necessary to really be considered a thought leader.
Yeah, I've experienced that too, working with different companies. And some of these truly visionary people, they either are too busy to go out and kind of build that audience, or they're just not interested because, maybe they're more introverted. Maybe they think that it's, not a serious thing to do. Like, what's serious is to work in your field and share knowledge with your Vistage group or whatnot. They're not necessarily motivated to share knowledge publicly. So I've experienced that too. And those truly are a lot of the people that are at the top of their game. And it's unfortunate that they're not out there sharing their knowledge more widely, because then more people could benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Right.
and the situation that creates is when you think about who are the people most qualified to be creating content, and typically it's your subject matter experts, right? Those are the people that others want to hear from, is what do the experts say? But those experts often are so busy doing their work, whether it's in a consulting situation or what have you, they're just too busy doing the hands-on work to really be spending much time doing any type of real content creation or, trying to build an audience. And that's where it creates this really critical kind of relationship between subject matter experts, these visionaries, and marketers. And that's where there's a huge opportunity for marketers and thought leadership to come into play to really help these visionaries move over to the right in this framework that I'm talking about into a realm or space of thought leadership, because on their own, it's possible, it can happen, right? You can have subject matter experts, these visionaries who are great content creators. They could be awesome writers. They're great in front of a camera. They could be, have a great podcast or what have you. But in most scenarios that I've experienced, the subject matter expert, these visionaries don't have the marketing skills or the writing skills or the production skills to really make and create content that leads to thought leadership that people really want to consume.
Yeah, the relationship between, internal subject matter experts and visionaries and marketers is really important. I'm going to ask you in a second, what would be a good place to start if you were a company trying to grow your thought leadership program. But first, I want to kind of understand better. You have this quadrant model, and you said it's really important to understand where each kind of persona sits. Is that because you're trying to move from one quadrant, or you're trying to kind of grow a person from one quadrant to the next, or is it a little bit more complex than that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit more complex, but that is definitely the gist of the idea, right? Just kind of a quick explanation of this quadrant. In this bottom left-hand quadrant, you have what I call dreamers. So in that dreamer quadrant, if you're moving over to the right into the space of a larger audience, you may be considered kind of in that realm an influencer. A quick example of this may show like my maturity a bit, but the like Fail Army on Instagram, right? They have a huge following, and they are, they have a large audience, but they're not an expert in any particular field, maybe besides growing, doing these fail videos, but you wouldn't really consider them to be a thought leader, right? Or a real visionary.
Right.
They just have a big audience, right? And so they're moving from this dreamer state over into this kind of influencer state. And then just above dreamer in this left-hand quadrant, we have that visionary state that I was explaining previously, like these tenured experts with a lot of original ideas and expertise, have high authority within their audience, which is usually relatively small. But so you have the dreamer in the left quadrant, visionary in the top left, influencer in the bottom right. Then what you really want to be moving into is that kind of upper right, diagonally to this upper right quadrant, which is this thought leadership quadrant. And the difference here, what helps people move from influencer state into thought leadership or visionary state into thought leadership, is combining the expertise and originality with growing audience, right? I said this previously, but you can't really be much of a thought leader if you're a visionary without an audience. And you can't really be much of a thought leader if you're an influencer, but without expertise and originality.
Right.
And so it's where it starts to converge in that upper right-hand quadrant. Now, the thing is, you can find yourself, you could be a really great audience builder and like fairly good in a particular space, or really good at kind of mimicking, and not trying to be rude with language here, but regurgitating what other people are saying in the space, but you just have a bigger audience. And so you're perceived as this thought leader, which I see happens more frequently than one may expect. But the difference in that top, upper, smaller quadrant that lives within the thought leadership quadrant is this visionary thought leadership quadrant. And this is for people who truly are experts and have their own original thinking, their own ideas, and that are leading change. And I would say that that is one of the biggest differentiators between a thought leader and a visionary thought leader is they are actually the cutting edge. They are actually moving and leading an industry into new frontiers, new space, and kind of blazing a path. And so I think that that's really like kind of the idea of this framework is how do you know where you are in this quadrant? Like, am I a dreamer? Am I an influencer? Am I a visionary? Am I a thought leader or a visionary thought leader? And once you can understand and kind of plot yourself in that quadrant, then you know what needs to be done and what tactics need to be employed to start moving into the direction you want to go.
I love that. I'm sure you're working on some sort of maturity model to help people self-assess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah. So and in my opinion, it's rather easy to look at the framework and look at the quadrant and help, kind of identify where you're at. Right. And I think it's something that any content creator, any individual, any organization can do rather easily.
Yeah, I love it. So now I can visualize it. Thank you for explaining. I know I'm thinking about the different Venn diagrams that I saw when I first looked at your framework, but now I'm visualizing an Eisenhower box. And on one axis, you have your expertise, and on one axis, you have your audience size.
Yep.
Am I thinking about it the right way?
Yeah. Yep. That's a pretty gist of it.
Okay, cool. So we aspire to grow our, most visionary, smartest people into these thought leaders that have a big audience that's going to listen to all of their amazing ideas. So how do you recommend companies partner with marketing to build their thought leadership program from the ground up?
Yeah, I love this question. I spent the last 6 years doing this. A lot of marketers find themselves in a space that they may not be the thought leader. And this happens a lot in more technical fields where in order to really become a thought leader in that space, and I'm talking specifically about the marketers, they'd have to go back to school. They'd have to spend years practicing. Like, it's not going to happen, right? You can become familiar with and even proficient in a particular space. But again, those other experts in the space can quickly identify when someone else is not an expert. And so it creates a situation for marketers where if they're trying to create content and trying to build thought leadership alone without their subject matter experts and without these visionaries, the real experts in their space and in their industry, they're going to spot them really quickly. And they're going to say, hey, these guys are charlatans. Like, these guys really don't know what they're talking about. And it can have an inverse effect where it starts impacting your credibility and the trust that people have in you. And so the question of like, how do marketers do this and how do you start this? You have to be really, really close and build a strong relationship of trust and collaboration with those subject matter experts, with those visionaries in your space. And you have to be able to, in a very journalistic approach, you have to be able to meet with them, learn as much as you can from what they're saying, audio recordings are so critical in this type of work. Because they just do not have the time. You can't be like, hey, would you go write this for me? Would you go create this for me? Because a lot of times they'll be like, oh, that's cute, kid. Like, not happening. I do not have the time for that. And so in some instances where we got to in my previous company, it was really fantastic to see when the visionaries and subject matter experts, when they started to see the impact that our thought leadership marketing was having, everyone really started to get excited and started jumping in. And instead of like, oh man, you're just wasting my time, it was now, hey, how can I get involved? Right? Because it builds the brand, the individual brands for those experts, for those visionaries. but also the collective brand building for those individuals in your company creates the overall brand building for your own company and that thought leadership for your company, so that helping those subject matter experts get bought in is really helpful in the speed and direction of the content that you're creating and thought leadership materials. But to start, it's really important that marketers can take a journalistic approach, kind of get all of the expertise and information out of the heads of the subject matter experts, create something, send it back to those experts for review, because I'm telling you, it could be a single word that a marketer gets on inside by whatever they write up, or, their video or whatever it is they're creating, that could completely destroy the content.
Right.
And so it has to be really carefully reviewed by your subject matter experts to give their stamp of approval to say, like, yes, this is accurate, this is good, this is a good representation of my thinking and where we're at. Or, hey, actually, guys, like, this is not great. Like, we need to make these edits. So that relationship of kind of checks and balances is super important, especially in the beginning.
Love it. So think like a journalist, number one. Number two, after you write something, give it back to the subject matter expert so they can vet the content. Make sure you're not using some word that makes you look like a junior imposter. That's really going to allow you to de-risk the content. And then you're going to show the impact of the program so that they're like, yeah, man, this is working. This is worth my time. And it's working in terms of helping the business, but also helping them. Like, maybe they have really wanted to get invited to speak at this big conference in front of all their peers, and now they're getting that invitation. So there's really the kind of a two-sided showing the impact that can help them want to work more with you and give you more of their time. And if you don't have impact to show quite yet because you're so early, I mean, I've dealt with tons of people that are very resistant, and I'll bring on freelance writers to help with some content, and they'll just completely ghost that person. And it's really, difficult for that person. So I would say another thing you can do, show results that similar companies, or if you can, competitors are getting by doing this thing that you're asking this subject matter expert to do. And that can be really helpful too.
Absolutely. I love that.
So Pete, I try to bring on a variety of people onto the show, sometimes marketing leaders such as yourself, sometimes, founders of agencies, sometimes actual writers, boots on the ground, the people that are doing the work, interviewing these visionaries and ghostwriting thought leadership on their behalf. And one reason I was excited to talk to you, besides the fact that you're obviously very passionate about thought leadership, is that you're in a really unique position that not many of us marketers ever get to be in. So you are at an extremely early age company, which is really exciting and challenging. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Parlay launched beta about 2 weeks ago. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. Like I said, a lot of marketers don't get to be in this position. I would love to hear a bit about what Parlay does, who you are, and who you serve.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot happening right now. Exciting times. Parlay, just in the very short, kind of version of this, is if you think of the buy now, pay later solution for SaaS, if you think of Firm or Klarna, but for businesses buying software that is usually only available on annual terms. So if you take, for example, turn a large upfront payment, let's just give an example with Domo, business BI and analytics tool. You may end up spending 50 grand up front, or much, much more, $100,000, $200,000 up front for this annual contract. Well, we take that contract, we pay for it up front, and then the buyer pays us on a monthly basis. So we really are trying to help companies get access to this top tier premium software without breaking bank and without jeopardizing cash flow.
Now, are you trying to speak to sales reps because they're going to have an easier time closing their deals, or sales leaders, or is it a step above? Are you talking more to like the C-level?
We end up having conversations with both. The real user of the software we're building, because it's a financing component and a software play. And this is where our go-to-market strategy comes into. When it comes to who's really using our software, it's the salespeople, right? So we're absolutely speaking to sales leaders. but the impact that it has, the C-level, especially in finance, like the highest level sales leaders and highest level finance leaders absolutely love it. The beauty of Parlay is that we don't, it's a partnership type of experience with the software provider, because we don't really charge the sales, at least at this point right now, we don't really charge the software provider to use our platform. It's really about the relationship with us and their buyer, right? So when we started out, it was just a financing play, and it was hard to get traction when it was just talking about financing. It's funny how few people wanted to talk to me about, creating this financing option for their customers. But then when I turn it into a software and turn it into a SaaS or a sales enablement tool, doors opened up and people were like, oh, yeah, let's talk about this. Sounds awesome.
Isn't it
And
so interesting? It's just the positioning of what you do.
it is. So we turned a
Yeah.
financing offering into a SaaS offering, and now like the doors are just like opening up.
That's so cool. So, let me kind of recap. So there's the old way. So if I'm a seller, I'm trying to close a deal. Let's say the annual contract value is $100K and my company has an upfront payment policy. So now I have to try to convince my buyer to pay $100,000 upfront, right? And now there's this new way with Parlay. So I'm a seller trying to close that $100K deal, but I don't need to force my buyer to pay in full upfront, right? Because they can pay Parlay in monthly increments, and then, their cash flow is intact. They feel comfortable. They're, not shouldering as much risk. And then Parlay is the one kind of picking up that risk. Am I talking
Yeah,
about that kind of the right way?
you nailed it. We're
Okay,
hiring.
cool.
So come join us.
So the cool thing about that is there's a very clear old way and a new way, which is like such a great foundation for thought leadership, showing people this new path to enlightenment. And you can either show people this new thing that they never in a million years thought of, it's completely new, or you're just showing them a new way to kind of reach this goal that they've already had, they've been like thinking about. So thinking about that, have you kind of started to think about content and how you could potentially use the old way, new way to kind of start building some thought leadership in that area? Or are you still kind of like not there yet?
Yeah, we're moving there. It really is early stages, and I've been wearing a lot of hats in, product development, project manager, sales, marketing, all the things that entrepreneurs do, right? We're a company of essentially two right now.
So
That
early.
being said, we find ourselves, this is a new category, right? There are very, very few players. I've been able to count like 2 legitimate players in this space right now outside of ourselves. And so that it is just a green pasture, right? The challenge that comes with that though, with that opportunity, is you're not only educating about what you do in your solution, you're educating about an entire category, right? So we're talking category creation here, and it is a lot of fun, but it increases the amount of work and the amount of effort that we have to go to when it comes to the education and sales.
Sounds exciting. And as you are hiring, anyone listening that's interested in this kind of very interesting subject matter, definitely follow Pete on LinkedIn. And if he starts posting jobs, maybe you'll be able to go work for Parlay. It sounds like a really kind of interesting space to create content about, I would think.
Yeah. And we're still really finding our voice and the best way to build that thought leadership in our positioning. But it is definitely an exciting time for those who like to experiment and try out new things. Like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So prior to Parlay, you were a senior director of marketing at a company called Angle Point, which is a startup with about 200 employees. And you have a lot of big wins listed on your LinkedIn, which is awesome. One of those is that you helped lead Angle Point to be named as a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader 3 years in a row for software asset management managed services. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So people obviously not obviously, but people do like to poke fun at the Magic Quadrant, the Forrester Wave, anything analyst related. But the truth is, I see it all the time with all the clients I work with. People do care still a lot about the analyst matters, right? And I'm curious, back when you were at Angle Point, did you use thought leadership to help get analyst attention?
Absolutely, 100%. It was at pretty much at the very core of our marketing program. And it was really interesting. When I started there, again, kind of going back to a previous comment, I was not a thought leader in that space. In fact, I didn't even know that industry
Like,
existed.
what is that?
Software
What is
asset
that?
management?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very
Like, I had
complex.
no idea. And so I definitely had to lean on our subject matter experts to, one, help educate me, but also in order to build that thought leadership for our organization. The tricky thing when I first started in this new space was I had to do my research, right? As any good marketer does when they find themselves in a new space or a new company, is they go to the research. What are the customers saying? What is the industry saying? And I needed to understand who in this space, who do people trust? Who do our buyers trust? Because I wanted to leverage that trust that industry players and our customers had in others. And I wanted to find a way to leverage that trust to build our own credibility and trust. And I found out really quickly that Gartner was just like this powerhouse that it blows my mind the trust and confidence that Gartner has within so many different industries, especially in the highest levels with your top buyers and top level experts. The trust and confidence that Gartner has. And those who have ever played kind of in this Gartner or Forrester space know that it can be a pay to play type world. So we didn't have a ton of money when I started, right? It was with Angle Point. Our marketing budget was considerably low. And so I had to find a way to build up that trust and confidence while on a pretty slim budget. So I knew that I needed the analysts at Gartner to know who we were. And I'm not kidding you when I say when I started there, people were calling us Angel Point and they couldn't get our name right. And they didn't really know what we did. And so I had a feat in front of us, right? A big challenge. And so I needed Gartner to know who we were, and I needed Gartner to trust us so that we could, leverage that trust. So there's this, I don't know if you call this like a Gartner hack or something, but I found a way to get audience with the analysts and to be kind of marketing to the analysts. Now, Gartner has, I know we're getting technical here, but we're going to jump in really quick because I also kind of find this a little fascinating. Gartner's has an offering called like inquiries where you can pay Gartner's analysts to meet with you and you can share some projects that you're working on or content that you're creating, whatever it is. They really like you can share anything with them. And it's pretty much a consulting kind of feedback service where they look at it, they analyze it, they help you make it better, right? They give you suggestions, recommendations. And to be honest, they're fantastic. So their analysts are really like grade A analysts. And so the feedback we were getting was awesome. And I wanted that feedback. Like I needed that feedback. But what I really wanted was them to know what we were doing and who we were and how freaking good we were at it. And so while they were busy analyzing our stuff to tell us how we can make it better, I really wanted them to be reviewing that content to realize like, whoa, these guys, like they're really good at what they do. Right. And as we went through those inquiries over time, when customers then would go to Gartner and say, hey, what companies are doing this stuff and what, who's really good in the space? Like we came top of mind, right? Like they knew that, oh, Angle Point does this. Like you should go talk to Angle Point. And the referrals that were coming in from Gartner were just like, it was insane. And so over time, we were going to all the Gartner events and doing, speaking. You have to pay when you go to a Gartner event to be a speaker, right? To be a presenter.
Yep.
We're paying to be a presenter there and just like trying to really build out our Gartner network and relationships there. And then just within a few years, and it is a long play. I'll tell you, thought leadership is a long play. If you think that you're going to start into a marketing program and employ thought leadership marketing, and it's just going to like crush it in, 2-3 months, like that's not going to happen, right? It's going to be a long play. But these referrals coming from Gartner were incredible. And then they created this new Magic Quadrant for our space. and we were at the very top.
Wow.
They don't allow you to say the quote unquote the leader.
But
You
we
get in
were.
trouble for that. Yeah, but we were. So you have to say we were the highest and furthest to the right is what they allow you
Oh,
to say.
okay. I didn't know
So
that. I learned something new today. I love this.
there
How
you go.
fun. Nice. Cool. So let's be honest. Asset management, managed services. First of all, it's a mouthful.
It's
But
such
it's
a
a really
mouthful.
such a mouthful. It's a
Yeah.
complex cerebral topic, which means you are likely trying to persuade, win over extremely smart, technical, and probably very skeptical people. Is that
Oh
true?
yeah, absolutely true.
Okay.
Our buyers were some of the most technical, brilliant minds from the world's largest organizations.
So when you're selling a really complex software and or service, the marketer's job gets exponentially harder, right? So can you share an example of maybe a content campaign or piece that landed really well with this extremely bright and skeptical technical audience?
Yeah, I'll give two quick examples. One, and this is going to get a little bit technical, but SAP had just been making some adjustments to some of how their licensing works. There's something called indirect access, which we won't get into. It's just, I mean, we don't want people falling asleep here. But these new changes were coming, and our SAP experts were literally the world's best licensing experts when it came to SAP. And we saw the opportunity to jump in really quickly and give kind of this like guide, like the end all be all guide to SAP indirect access. So we created this really quickly with our SAP team, and they crushed it. They created such great content, and our marketing team was on point. It was easy to consume, but also very educational. And within a few weeks, we were the top hit in Google. You know, we're talking search engine optimization here for the indirect access, even passing SAP themselves, right?
Oh, wow.
So it was awesome when it came to the SEO juice that was coming from that. But everybody was consuming this SAP indirect access content, which was incredible, and then eventually led to more engagements and work with new SAP clients of ours. So that was fantastic. One example.
When you say
Yeah.
your SAP team, are you talking about an internal team or are you talking
Yeah.
about partnering with like a partner at SAP?
Yeah, thank you. We did have partner teams of partner marketing, but for this specific example, I'm talking about our internal SAP analysts and experts.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
no, it's all good. So for this second example, when I started in this space, I saw some of our competitors doing webinars, and I went to one of our partner companies. It was actually our conglomerate, like our mother company. They were our owners. And I went to them, to their marketing team. I said, hey, tell me about webinars. Like, how are they working for you? Like, are they successful? And one of the marketers I spoke with, it was their top marketer for the US, the US head marketer. And they pretty much said, don't waste your time. Don't get into it. And, you know, I trusted that advice. And so I was like, okay, you know, if you've gone in there and you tried it, then, you know, I guess I'll pass. Well, after about a year, you know, I just thought, hey, you know, let's give it a try. I know what the advice was, but let's just throw our hat in the ring here and give it a go. And working with one of my team members said, hey, I know you've never done this before, but I want you to try and create a new webinar program. And just like go find a mentor, go find someone else in who's just crushing with webinars, learn as much as you can, have fun with it, and let's just see what happens. And she went out and she did just that. She found someone crushing with webinars. She came back and she started employing a lot of those ideas. And it started slow, right? With any new channel that you jump into, like it usually starts slow. Well, within about a year's time, we had, you know, a pretty good amount of people joining our webinars and our audience was growing. But within about 2-3 years time, that webinar program was just slaying it. It was one of our top revenue drivers, top lead drivers. And to think, like at the beginning, I was told, don't try it. Like, don't waste your time. And it just absolutely slayed. So when we're talking about this kind of thought leadership, we had people who, you know, a large group of our targeted audience who was just like asking for it and almost begging for different materials and new content, which really helped us in the thought leadership space.
That's cool. And what do you think it was about the webinar, either content or speakers, that helped you be so successful?
I think a lot of it had to do with us listening to
Mm,
really knowing what our audience wanted to hear, what they wanted to learn. We asked them, right? In webinars, we would ask them. With LinkedIn posts, surveys, we would ask them. We would ask our current customers, and we would just look at what is the industry saying? What are our own experts and analysts? What are they saying? What is the data, right? What do the analytics tell us? And accumulation, taking all of that, right? Customer feedback, our analysts, what the industry is talking about. And I do want to mention, like, if you're just listening to what other people are saying, what the industry is talking about, you're always going to be reactive, right? You're not going to be cutting edge because you're just talking about what everybody else is talking about. And what
right.
I mentioned before, when it comes to thought leadership, you may be perceived as a thought leader, but you're not visionary, right? You're just
Right.
going with the flow. And so you have to be able to create original content that people aren't talking about yet. And that's where it comes to your subject matter experts, your visionaries, and going to them and saying, what are people going to be talking about in 6 months or in a year? Or, what do people want to talk about? Or to be honest, not even know that they want to talk about, but will absolutely be excited to talk. So going back to the original question, we listen, and I'm talking about the marketing team. We listened to our people and our customers, and like it just provided really great insights on what content we should be creating.
That's cool. Something that I learned at my last job, we were a behavioral assessment company turned into a talent optimization platform. And one thing I learned about visionaries is that some of that is hardwired, right? So some people are just naturally behaviorally wired to think vision, long term, big ideas. Some people are wired for the details and can be really powerful if you are trying to put together a thought leadership program to pair maybe your visionary, who's not as much of a deep subject matter expert, with a true subject matter expert. And even if that's not going to be one person, you can have them work together along with marketers and writers. And that can also be really powerful. Just wanted
Oh,
to
I
add
love
that.
that. Absolutely.
So, Pete, we're coming up on time. If you could leave our listeners with any one tip, professional or personal, what would that be?
Oh man. Yeah, I think I'm going to go personal route. And I would say, know what your metrics are for success in your life. I feel like so often people get deep into their careers and into trying to build success, quote unquote success, to find later down the road that they're not as happy as they, thought they would be, now reaching these greater heights of kind of this perceived success. But when you know how to measure your life, and this idea comes from the late Clayton Christensen in his book, How Will You Measure Your Life? Some really impactful for me, real impactful ideas is, if I truly want to live an intentional life and to be thriving, I need to know what really success means and what are the metrics that get me there.
I love that. And his TED Talk on that topic is so brilliant too, if you don't want to sit down and read a whole book.
Yeah.
So this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Pete. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Erin. This has been a lot of fun. And man, I love talking about this subject. So if you want to talk more, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect there.
Yeah, connect with Pete. Definitely. Have a great day. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Notorious Thought Leader. If you're looking for more stories from marketers who are generating demand from thought leadership, then visit us at motionagency.io/notorious. See you next time.